Hey, it's now week 3, and this week's topic is equipment. I kind of mentioned it last time when I talked about having mosquito repellent around. Well, that in addition to having the right clothing and shoes is really important. So this is the time where I try to tell my folks not to spend too much money but to invest in things that'll make a difference as far as hiking. If you're just doing this for getting a lifestyle change started, that's fine, but you still have to have the proper equipment. So when we don't have good equipment, when you have ill-fitting shoes or the wrong kind of material on your clothes, it makes for injury. Whether the injury is excessive sweating or sunburn or problems with something called hot spots and blistering in boots. It's important. So I'm going to start from toes and go to the head. So shoes. This sand is totally different than scrambling on mountaintop. And the shoes I use for going uphill on a mountain will be totally different than the shoes that we use on sand. Ankle support on sand, if we're hiking, I don't think it's as important. In fact, I think it impedes proprioception and flexibility. So I usually will go with shoes that have nice traction, waterproof capabilities, and don't have a problem or don't have any points to leak sand in. So if I didn't, then I'd have blisters. But bottom line with shoe wear is you might want to see what's on sale, check out last year's models, go to a place that is a hiking store. If you go to an average place where you talk to salespeople that don't hike, they might just tell you what's on the description. If you go to a hiking store, they can test you out on an incline, test you out with a load in your backpack. Changes the dynamics. So it's worth the investment of checking in the places out that have hikers. And if it's still expensive, you can always get fitted, and then when you're happy with what you're going to buy, take it to Amazon and maybe get it for a cheaper price. So shoes are very important. Socks, wool, because cotton usually makes water stay. Wool at least tries to wick away and pull perspiration away from the skin. It decreases the chances for blister formation. Pants, that's a no-brainer. I would probably say whatever's comfortable, but if we're doing a lot of waterproofing, or if you're in a wet environment and you use waterproof, that's cool. If you use waterproofing in a hot environment, it's going to essentially be like a sauna to your legs. So it's important to know where you're going and try to get something that's not too expensive that will help you acclimate to your environment wherever you're going to be. Venting ports on the side of the legs, conversion pants that can turn from long pants to short pants, always a good option. More variability with those. Underwear, again, I would go with more wool if you can find it. I'm not talking about the old-fashioned wool, I'm talking about merino wool or wool blends. Shirts, really important. I could actually take this shirt off on the beach, but the problem is I'll get sunburned. Certainly have convection of air, takes sweat away quickly, but then I run the risk of getting sunburned, and in the long run, after a couple days, if I'm sunburned, I can't diffuse and sweat as good as usually good quality skin can evaporate sweat. So burning is also painful. Having shoulder straps on shoulder burns or blisters, you're not going to be able to concentrate on your footing, and you might risk a twisted ankle, even if you have high tops. So I like the blends, the dry fits that will help wick away moisture. Worth the investment, but again, you have to try to find whether it's a short sleeve shirt, long sleeve shirt, or the fit too. Some people like snug fitting, almost like a base layer. Some people like to have it loose and aerated. So check out what you can get on your own, research a little bit online, and try to save some money. Next would be hat. This brim is pretty decent as far as keeping the shade out of my eyes, so I'm not blinded, I'm not squinting all the time. And it also is collapsible, but it's not waterproof. So if I get to a place where it's going to be drizzling, this is not going to do me any good. So again, wide brim hat versus cap versus no hat at all. It's always good to have an extra. I wouldn't use anything that takes up too much luggage space, but again, you have to get used to that. And also, if you're trying to break in a hat last minute, it'll be too tight around the temporal area, cause a headache after a couple hours, so you don't want that either, which is a good reason not to be squinting all the time, because that also leads to headache. In the middle of a hike or a couple of day hikes, you don't want to be supporting a headache. It just makes concentration a little bit tougher and enjoyment a little bit less. So another reason. So as far as the goggles, I like to have something that wraps around and can drape around the neck. I sometimes will take glacier glasses. That's the glasses with side binders on mountaintops. Here, don't really have the glare as much except for the sun, maybe in the water, but these will do. These are cheap, and usually you'll find it in motorcycle sports places. And then comes the fitness wear. Sometimes you can get mechanics that'll tell you how you're doing or track your advance. If you are into that, it's good accountability. I wouldn't spend too much money. This Garmin is really nice. It'll tell you speed, heart rate, sometimes temperature. Thanks, Abe. And again, it keeps you accountable, especially if you're doing a 50-hour work week and you sometimes have a problem with keeping up with your training. And this is all just for training. So the objective is always to make a lifestyle change that's sustainable, but to introduce a reason to have the change. Most people about January 1st have a great intention, but then they give it up because other priorities come up. I think it's because planning isn't that well thought out. And this is where 12 weeks to change might be something that's tangible, easy plan. And whether you come with me to one of my hiking excursions, or you're just gonna take off on your own in your part of the country and investigate some sustainable activity that you might be available or might be available to you, it's still just to initiate change. The final thing would be, as far as equipment, this thing. I think it's so important to be fitted with a proper backpack. And there's actually links, depending on your height or your torso length, that are adequate. So you really should be fitted by a place that knows what they're talking about. But I usually will try to get my patients or people who are making changes to get used to 30 pounds in the pack. Military studies have shown 30 pounds is about the weight average human can tolerate in a backpack, no matter what kind of backpack you have, where it doesn't slow down the pace. If you have uncomfortable shoulders, shoulder straps, narrow, spaghetti thin straps, that will hurt. After a couple hours, it'll dig into your skin, cause a blister. Painful. You'll have to have somebody else carry your pack. If you have no pec strap, pectoralis strap, or waist strap, I think it just decreases the options for adjusting your pack after an hour or two. If you have more straps for adjustability, you can kind of change the distribution of your weight, or the weight you have in your pack over your body or waist or your back. So nice to have those options. And also you have it's nice if you have hydration flask in here that's built in with a hose around the front. I usually just put mine in the back about every hour, 30 minutes, depending on how hot. I'll take it out, take a water break, and every couple hours refuel. So it depends on the crowd. So it also depends on the temperature, and that's why I'm not even walking that fast. I'm not struggling on this sand, but ambient temperature is hot, so I'm starting to sweat. If you sweat because of temp, that's one thing. Adjust your hydration so you can maintain a equal balance. But if you sweat because of exertion, it's going to increase body temperature and make you sweat. When you sweat and you're wet, and then the sun drops, like when we started, I was in the shade. That's about 10 degrees less than out here. But if you go in to a shaded area and you're wet, it makes you cold and shivery. Again, it sets you up for injury, or at least getting sick. So thus the reason why it's important to have all this equipment. I've accumulated so much equipment over the last few years. I can kind of, they're not the newest styles, but I'll just pull from my storage, and depending on the hike, see and put together my favorites for the place we're going to. So that in a nutshell is usually it. There's a couple other things with regards to shells, if it's cold outside, down if it's, again, sub-zero, and then there's tenting and sleeping bags. But just to make it easy, I think it's important to start with this. If you can make it sustainable, then hopefully after 12 weeks you'll springboard into something else new.